enterprise layer call 152, issue 1323 in the PM repo. And yeah, there's a lot to discuss today. We have some test nets to investigate. So let's go ahead and get started. Pectra is the name of the game. And yeah, let's go ahead and just get into Holesky. So I think we all are familiar with the latest on Holesky. I did just look at the chain a few minutes ago, and participation was much higher than I was expecting, which is good. Anyone here would like to give an update on Holesky any further? Maybe some client teams on what they're seeing, and then from there we should discuss recovery. I guess I can ask, like, are clients feeling good about how they're performing on Holesky?
So I guess I would say from Lighthouse, we at this point we've made enough mitigations for Lighthouse nodes to be manageable, I believe, but a, a feature that we've added is manually finalizing your node, which is essentially just like allowing you to prune your hot database in case it's getting too big. But there's bigger, more structural. There's like a big feature we had in the works that would help here, that we will get in like, the relative short term, but not like immediately. So I guess we have enough mitigations to feel good, but we're not fully there in addressing like fundamental issues. Yeah, POTA, so it's tree states. Right now what we have is we have tree states in the our freezer DB, so our cold DB, and we also have it in our in-memory structure, but we don't have it in our hot database. And our hot database holds unfinalized states, so that's why like disk is going out of control.
Right. So yeah, I think most of the CL clients are taking up a lot of resources during this period of non-finality on Holesky. So the sooner we can get to finality, the better. Yeah, I guess maybe we'll go then to this doc here from Manu. Do you want to say anything, Manu? I think you did some investigation into an estimate.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so you can click on this link. Basically, it's a model which estimates when Holesky can finalize again. So it takes into account the inactivity leak, the init slash slashing penalty, the correlation slashing penalty, and the validators leaving the queue. And it has also some hypothesis. It's on the first tab of this document, README. And you can explore it and tweak it if you want. And basically, with the condition of this morning, we can expect finality for Holesky on 28th, so in 28th of March, so in 22 days.
Yeah. Okay. This looks nice. Thanks for putting it together. So yeah, I guess that's the next step then, is like if we won't finalize until the end of the month, we should discuss if we want to wait for that or try to pipeline a bit. There have been some ideas around either new test nets or like, yeah, different variants of Holesky. One big thing is that we don't really want to go to mainnet until different users and different stakers and things can test out the new features that we have in Pectra. And yeah, right now they can't really do that. Holesky was the place to do that, and Holesky is not really usable right now. So yeah, Perry put this link here in the chat, path forward for Holesky, and laid out some options. Perry, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah. So I think the first question is, do we want to continue using Holesky once it has finalized, or are we discussing replacing Holesky with another network, and that other network is the path forward? So even if Holesky finalizes, we essentially abandon it once it's done. I think once we answer that initial question, then there are about four options outlined in the document, each one with a bit more detail as to how we envision a recovery scenario to look. But I think the core question is still, is Holesky worth keeping around after it's finalized, or is it not?
So I would say we should recover Holesky because it's like a good exercise to go through. Separately, yeah, I think having another network to direct people to for testing is a good idea.
Yeah, and also just to Lightline's point, is there value in syncing a network? In about 3 weeks' time, the network would finalize again. So at that point, it's a regular network again. So you would be syncing it as you would any other network. At least getting a temp check from client devs earlier, it sounded like we wanted to keep Holesky around long term. Clients were okay with doing maxi deposits and bumping up the amount of stake on Holesky. So essentially, it sounded as if we just need a testing location for the next couple of weeks. So is that the right reading, or would people prefer another approach?
I guess one point here is if we have a second network, it'll be double the infra. And it is just for a temporary amount of time, but
yeah,
there's some cost there. How do client teams think about this? Because, you know, I think ideally there'd be some configuration to separate the new Holesky from the old one. You'd probably need to support that in your client, cover releases, and this whole thing. Yeah, Terrence?
What do the staking pools think about this? Just like I presume they're the biggest like users here, and they have some existing setup on Holesky as well, right? So they do want to test it. So yeah, do that like has anyone talked to them yet?
Yeah, yeah. I'm Ivan from Lido here. So for us, Holesky is really critical, and without Holesky finalizing, we'll have a very hard time, or like almost impossible, to test Pectra-related changes to our protocol, but also to test whatever integrations we have with other protocols that use Lido. So once Holesky gets to finality, we will also need some time to make sure that the protocol is able to digest whatever happened on Holesky, because it will likely go into what we call a bunker mode, which is a very special mode of operation that results from mass slashings and delayed Oracle reports. Once the protocol is recovered, we will also need time to test all our monitoring and new releases of oracles and so on. So yeah, for us, it's really critical that it works.
And you don't think you could test the same things with a second network?
Depends what is on the second network, because a lot of like Lido has a lot of dependencies, and that second network would have to be, I guess, not worse in terms of features and deployed protocols, and also the numbers and types of the node operators and validators as Holesky. Because, for example, we have DBT module in Lido that requires certain features like SSV or Oval. We have Eigenlayer and Aave integrated with Lido, and they have to work. So all of that should be on that second network.
Right. Yeah. So we could basically clone Holesky so it would look the same as it does today. You would just have a network that works.
At least on the contract level. So the tooling level would, of course, depend on the Oracle providers, RPC providers, etc., to support the shadow fork. But the Aave contracts will exist. Everything that is on chain will exist at the exact location that it has existed since the last few days, weeks, whatever.
Yeah, and in terms of the the number of validators, how many do you think will be from this new network?
If we're doing a shadow fork, we can aim to have the same validator set size. There's also two options. We can even use a large majority of the Genesis validator set in where we have the private keys. There's also another option where we come with a new validator set, but in both options, we would have the same number of validators.
And in terms of client diversity, how will it look like?
I think we basically have free reign on that, so we can design it to be as close to Holesky or mainnet or whatever you would like.
Yeah. I think like it sounds like if it's totally replicated, then I don't see why we would be not okay with it. So yeah, but then the question is, would it be faster than wait for Holesky to finalize?
Yeah, I mean, the shadow fork is something we can get up and running as early as next week. So it would be about a few weeks faster than Holesky. The downside would be all the external dependencies. So stuff like oracles, RPC providers, we're not sure what their timelines would be.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, why not? For us, having this also is important because if something goes wrong on mainnet, we need some kind of a place to test fixes to the protocol. And if it's a new network like a shadow fork, I guess it covers that need as well. Well, we don't have like a less networking. Sepolia also not ideal.
All right, so then it sounds like we should parallelize and just start. Well, we should do both. So have the new network, and presumably we can get all the infra and things that we need up sooner than Holesky will finalize. And then obviously once Holesky finalizes, we can either tear down the new network, perhaps keep them both. We'd have the option to do what we want. But yeah, that way we can keep moving forward on Pectra and not add, say another couple weeks of delay just because of the status of Holesky. PeerDAS?
Yeah, so from one client team perspective, at least, we have the following problem, which is we are certain to have a bunch of bugs on attestations. We fixed some, but these bugs are being shadowed by all the problems that clients are having right now. So it seems that Holesky as it is today is not really usable for us to diagnose Pectra itself, which is what we wanted to do. And that's why we had this buffer of a month running on a good testnet to actually decide on mainnet, to decide of a go on mainnet. And we don't have this now. And a shadow fork would only be a test. It wouldn't really be a testnet in all of the P2P side of things. So that's the trade-off that I see on like rushing without really having diagnosed our bugs that are existent. They are there.
And you couldn't investigate these things on the shadow fork?
Well, you can investigate a bunch of things on a shadow fork that is stable, but definitely not things that depend on decentralization. Holesky is something of the size of mainnet and is actually decentralized. I mean, nodes are everywhere. Shadow fork, well.
One point I will add to that though, Holesky is large, but the order of nodes is around 500 to 1,000. It is decentralized, but it's about 10x smaller than mainnet.
So on mainnet, we're fine with these numbers, right? Like 1,000 nodes is 1,000 nodes.
Yeah, but the shadow fork we're talking about would also have between 500 and 1,000 nodes. The main difference is that Holesky has setups in the wild. For example, a testnet in vouch would be running there. Of course, we can ask Jim to run on the shadow fork as well, but I don't know, if someone has forked their client and is running on Holesky, we'll never be able to replicate that. But in terms of pure node size and distribution, we'll aim to be as close to Holesky as possible.
So you can keep like 1,000 nodes running for a month.
That's what I've been told we're okay to do.
I mean, this is important. So I think we should go ahead and do it. Assuming there aren't any like technical blockers. Radek?
Yeah, so I have two comments here. I'm a little bit worried about starting a new network, although I think it's a good idea, but I'm a little bit worried that if we start a new network, then people will start like abandoning Holesky, meaning that, for example, people will, I don't know about client teams or maybe others will just start running nodes on the new network and not run any validators or nodes anymore on Holesky, and then participation will drop, blocks will be missed, etc. So, because the new network works, people will just stop using the old one. And this is something related to what Ivan said from Lido, that they have some kind of a bunker mode. And I guess bringing Holesky to finality and keeping Lido on Holesky and checking if it works would be a test if this bunker mode actually works. Whereas if, for example, Lido switches to the new network and just abandons Holesky, then they will never really be able to like actually test like this bunker mode because because they will just move over. So my I guess my little worry is that because of the new network, we will just treat Holesky as like a second class citizen, and maybe even it will just degrade over time, or we will not be able to properly test like refinalizing both in client teams and external users, because they will just start using the new network, which is stable.
Yeah, in terms of like internal bandwidth, like we could have half of the client team work on this new net and half focused on Holesky. Does something like that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course that makes sense. I'm also thinking about external, like not client teams but other staking pools and whatever, that they would not stop like caring about Holesky, move to the new network, and then they will never be able to like test what happens when there's a final, like when the chain starts finalizing or stuff like that. Just saying that this will be like not retested exactly as it would happen on mainnet, because we will probably have a new network which is stable and people will just move there.
Yeah, I mean, we could commit to tearing down the new network in say a month. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Inflag?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, because right now it's really hard to say, is it just buggy clients that make the network unstable or people being offline? Because over the weekend, the network was in a lot better, worse shape than it is now. So I guess it's maybe both, but looks like also just people not watching their nodes and keeping them up. So just from a testing perspective, it would be nice to still keep a good focus on the current Holesky network.
Yeah, Ivan?
Yeah, from the Lido side, it would be ideal if we keep focus on Holesky, because we have all our processes tailored to that. But we probably would be able to also find resources like you, like split the team into two parts, one working on Holesky, one working on the shadow fork. But we won't be able to do that for long because of the limited bandwidth.
Right. So I guess something else to keep in mind, I think there's some chat comments. There's Ephemery, and there's also the DevNet 7 that we spun up. I'm not sure if anyone wants to speak to those, but they could take some amount of this testing load.
Yeah, maybe just a brief about DevNet 7. It's already live. It's about the same validator size as mainnet. So you have about 1 million validators running on about 500 nodes and geo-distributed. The downside is, like Ivan mentioned, it's a fresh network. There's no dependencies there. So if you depend on the Aave contract, whatever, unless you can convince them to do the deployments, you won't be able to use it. But if you're a staking pool or a regular home staker who just needs a location to test, then it would be useful. However, it seems like the benefit right now is minimal to keep it around, so we'd rather take it down. And if you're someone smaller who's looking for a location to test validators, then please go to Ephemery instead.
Yeah, we got a +1 here to temporary Holesky shadow fork, which is, I think, the strategy I prefer at the moment. Okay, so we'd spin DevNet 7 down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? It feels like we can save some time by having the Holesky shadow fork, so I would lean towards doing that. Ben?
Just since you mentioned spinning DevNet 7 down, has all the consolidations, etc., been tested on DevNet 7, and is it happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, on 7 we have. Terrence?
Yeah, one last comment about the shadow for Holesky. I think it's important to know that client need to run something, right? So even after Holesky is finalized, those slash clients doesn't have keys anymore. So we need to also deposit, redispute the keys, and that also takes time too. So we need to so we probably shouldn't erase the shadow fork unless we get to like 1.8 million validators, basically the previous state.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
One comment on that. I think because of the churn limit, to get back up to 1.8 million validators might take significantly longer. It might be roughly a year. I'm not sure if we want to keep the network around for that long.
We're going to do support till 28 anyway.
Holesky shadow fork.
No, not for Holesky shadow fork.
That's what
Holesky.
Yeah, Holesky we'll keep around. I'm talking about Holesky shadow fork.
I think we should spin that down. So
Exactly.
personally, I think Holesky shadow fork should be spinned down once Holesky is finalizing.
Yeah.
So approximately, hopefully in 3 weeks.
And I think anytime there's a need for a really large network, we're happy to spin one up. But the main downside is that these networks cost a lot of money to keep up.
Otis, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was gonna ask a question. I thought there was much less slashings that we were expecting. So I thought that the exit of the validators that are in the wrong chain still, or just didn't update, was gonna be the main driver.
Yeah, I mean, if they haven't been slashed, they could even finalize, like they could help finalize the good chain, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. So if the slasher is actually effectively off now and we finalize, then the clients are going to keep the keys. So it's fine. Clients are still testing, are still producing blocks, so they're active. They're not leaking.
Yeah.
Solius?
Yes, I'm just wondering, so is there a big need for the other parties except the core devs to run a large number of validators as they did previously on Holesky? So because if they are also testing this, then because it will take a lot of time to get a lot of validators again on Holesky. It's not going to work. I mean, Holesky anyway not going to work for longer for them. So apart from execution layer state, is there some other entities that are heavily testing on the large number of validators on Holesky? So is it known thing or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're all the staking pools and then all of like the solo stakers and home operators. So, I mean, Holesky has decent usage.
Yeah, but for let's say for LiDAR, so I think they mostly were interested in the EL state. Is it true, Ivan? Are you still at the?
No, for us, it's both. Both are important because we have many node operators who run Holesky.
Mhm.
So both EL state is important, but also whatever happens on the consensus layer.
Okay, so actually, if the net even if the network finalizes in a month or whatever it will be the date, it's still not enough for you because you will not be able to have a large number of validators that you can run. Is it? That's right.
So once Holesky finalizes, what will likely happen is that LiDAR will go into this so-called bunker mode because of the slashings and also the fact that Oracle reports haven't been coming through. It will take some time to restore the protocol from the bunker mode to the normal operational mode. And once that is done, we'll also need to run some tests of the new features, like to make sure Lido protocol works well with Pectra. And after that, we will also need to make sure that all our monitoring tools work and the oracles work that other parties run and so on. And after that, we'll also need to prepare for the voting to update the Lido protocol. So we'll need to know the exact epoch for the mainnet. And we'll need to make sure that voting Lido Aragon vote passes and passes like from one go to make sure the protocol is actually updated at all times.
Yeah, but all you said is unlikely. It doesn't need to have 1 million of active validators on the network, right?
No, it doesn't need a million.
Yeah, so likely there is a quite low need to have a huge number of validators on the Holesky. So you would be essentially happy with finalizing network that has a relatively small number of validators, like 100K or 200 or so.
Probably yes. The most important for us is that we have a similar setup as we can to mainnet in terms of at least like the client diversity and in terms of the types of validators that are being run. So for example, we will definitely need DVT to be tested with both SSV and Noble because that's like an integral part of the Lido protocol. That doesn't require millions of validators, but it's more about the like coverage, covering like in test coverage. You need to cover all the different cases that are relevant. The big number of validators is also a test in itself, but I don't think that for Lido specifically, it's going to be a blocker.
Okay, thank you. So if anyone will know like real cases where the relatively small number of validators is a blocker, then yeah, let us know because it's important.
And Ivan, just a clarification, do you feel like you could do productive testing on the shadow fork in the meantime?
I think so. At least currently, I don't see any blockers to that.
Okay, yeah, and then you may want to do other things once we finalize Holesky, but yeah, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
Radek?
Yeah, so my main understanding is that, we have Holesky in the size that we have so that we can test features that we then will roll out to mainnet, right? And especially hard forks. And so with regards to when we want to remove the shadow fork, I think the shadow fork now becomes our test ground for mainnet, for Pectra mainnet, which means that if we finalize Holesky, but we're still not 100% sure that what we tested on the shadow fork is good enough for us to say, yes, let's go to mainnet, then I would say we should not tear down the shadow fork, right? We should basically, I think the shadow fork will become like the testnet for Pectra, and then the Holesky can become testnet for Fusaka because it will probably be healthy as Holesky was before the accident by the time that we will roll out to the next hard fork. So that's my opinion about timing the teardown of the shadow fork.
Okay. Inflag?
So my comment is related to what PeerDAS mentioned. So basically regarding the attester slashing. So we had a quick discussion on the testing call on Monday. And I mean, the only reason right now why we are not slashed is because slashers don't work properly. They produce like 1, 2, 3 indices per slashing, even in huge ones. So we will never slash them. So the outcome there was we considered to handcrafting good slashings so we can actually see the spec mechanisms play out. And I guess the second comment related to that, I think it would be a mistake to finalize Holesky right now, just because the slasher doesn't work. So personally, I would prefer for the spec mechanisms to work out or play out so we can see this actually works and we are not basically cheating just because it's broken. So And yeah, I don't see an issue, at least for us, to keep the non-finalized chain running for a few more months. So at least right now, we are not aware of any ticking time bombs that will kill our client. So yeah.
It feels like the slashing issue, however, is not necessarily unique to Holesky, right? That's also something we can provide an alternate testing ground for you. And it is definitely something we should be tracing down and fixing. I think I just disagree with the location purely because there's a lot of dependencies on Holesky that we can't control. Whereas with the slashing bug, there are no dependencies. We can control everything. We can create the bug. We can fix the bug. We can retest it, whatever we want, in a location that allows others to continue their work, basically.
Okay, so basically the goal you mean would be to finalize Holesky ASAP, basically try to get 66% online right now, or?
Ideally, yes.
Okay, and then we would spin up a NFT DevNet to test this scenario.
I think the whole exercise has shown us that NFT DevNets are just, long form is non-finality DevNets are something we can't sleep on any longer. So we will be putting a lot more resources and time on that anyway.
Okay, my only worry there would be that a lot of the bugs we had were not popping up on the NFT DevNet. So we need to figure out how to get this in a state where we see those bugs, yeah.
Yep.
We could just reuse an older version of Geth that triggered the bug.
Yeah, we can actually just trigger the bug the exact same way we did on Holesky.
Okay, so it sounds like we like the idea of the shadow fork. We'll move ahead with that. In parallel, we get finality back on Holesky. I think a provisional date to spin down the shadow fork would be once we finalize Holesky, maybe plus a week or so. And we can always revisit that as we get closer and decide if we need to keep the shadow fork around for longer. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yeah, I do think we should, I mean, aligned with POTUS, I think we should push for a longer lived shadow fork, but we can evaluate that later. There's just a lot of ops time and effort on our side. But yeah, we can have that debate later. I think this is a good first step.
Okay, great.
There's one more minor announcement we wanted to make. Is there any reason to keep the Mekong testnet up and running? It's running an older version of the spec. It's been up for a long time, but it feels like everyone has moved on Pectra testing to new locations, and we'd rather repurpose those machines if possible. So I guess the question is, do people want DevNet 7 to continue running as well as the Mekong testnet? If there's no answer, then we'd like to take both down by end of day tomorrow or today.
We got a chat comment, no interest. And yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, we'll have a blog post on the EF blog as well, just announcing this and give people some time to react, but we go ahead with that. And maybe just one more small comment, a bit of a happy note, I guess. The Chiado testnet forked earlier today with Pectra, and it seems to be successful.
Yeah, good to hear. Cool. Okay. Anything else on Holesky? We can touch on Sepolia because we had a Sepolia Pectra fork yesterday. That was also kind of fun. Okay, yeah. So then for Sepolia, the fork was yesterday, and yeah, there was an issue with how some of the EL clients were processing essentially a custom deposit contract on that network, and it caused some issues. This was with the 6110 mechanism and the execution request. So luckily we were able to recover it after some quick on-hands debugging. But yeah, otherwise Sepolia looks good, and it actually is the healthiest I've seen it, I think, ever. So yeah, I guess this is another note. If you're listening and need to test, especially any like application layer things, Sepolia would be a great place for that. Any other comments on Sepolia? Mario?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I think we should discuss a little bit on the root cause, and there's still some differences that we can address between EL clients, particularly the ABI encoding that is happening of the deposit contract. There's a PR that has been opened by Joachim, and I think it's very important that we all come together into deciding that we parse the deposit contract logs the same way. Basically, I mean, it's not a problem here. It's not gonna cause a problem in mainnet, but I think it would be nice to not have like ABI encoding enshrined into the protocol in some way or another. So yeah, my suggestion is that we should like not use this encoding and basically just try to extract the deposit information that we require directly from the byte array. I think that would lower the risk of, for example, running into a library bug due to the ABI encoding, and that causing some sort of consensus issue. So yeah, that is I think Joachim shared the PR, and I will encourage EL devs to look into it. And so we can have a way to proceed. Yeah.
Do we want to formally get this into the Pectra specs?
I think so, yes. And we're gonna update the tests to include these scenarios. For example, scenarios with and without the ABI encoding. Because yesterday we generated one test first without it, and it caused some problems for some ELs to pass the test. So I think we can just regenerate the tests with this in mind, and to make sure that the ABI encoding is not like any cause of issue ever. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one related thing here, Mikhail made an update to, I think this was 6110, to basically just specify the strict behavior here. So that's been merged, and yeah. Anything else on Sepolia? Okay, if not, then I did want to touch on mainnet timing, but we've kind of covered it already. It seems like we need information. We need more information from how Holesky goes, how the shadow fork goes before we can really set a concrete date. Anyone else have any comments on this? Yeah, Malcolm.
Yeah, just one comment, because this is about like the ABI decoding, yes or no. Like Roman just posted a comment. We should really decide if we want this or not, because this will differ in the test. And if we want the ABI decoding like enshrined into the protocol basically, then Geth is also going to need an update.
Yeah, so my view on this is that we don't want to enshrine the ABI, because that would mean we would need to enshrine our ABI library. I don't know about your guys' implementation of the ABI decoding, but ours is pretty shit, and we don't want this to be in the critical part of the consensus.
I completely agree. So let's please go with the offsets and the sizes like the hard coded version which Geth has. So no ABI decoding. Yeah.
Hey, so this is sorry, maybe okay, I can start speaking. Sorry. So this is Felix from Geth. So as far as I understand, in your PR, you are proposing to formally codify the approach that is also being used in Geth and some other clients with the offsets, but it is an implementation detail, I think. So for me, it doesn't really make sense to put it in the spec exactly as is, because the only thing that really has to be specified is just like how we get the information from the like how we get the information from the contract output is not so important, I think. Like the most important thing is that we produce correct output, but the spec doesn't really have to tell the method by which the output is extracted.
Okay, then I will have to investigate further, because then I don't understand why clients passed the first version of the test yesterday, yes or no. I will have to investigate, and I will get back to that later. Yeah.
Okay, if I can add something, well, ABI also a BI format is already part of consensus because logs come with this format, so it's already enshrined in consensus. Now there is a question: how do we want to decode it, and do we want to enshrine any enshrine its implementation detail? Do we want to use for consensus any libraries? And the answer is like kind of agree this is implementation detail, but if you like hard code the offsets, if there's something different with the ABI, you kind of fail, and you parse garbage. And do we want like there's a change in ABI, and do we want the clients to potentially parse garbage on production networks? I'm kind of like leaning to let's parse this message properly as it was encoded and go with that.
Hello. So yeah, apparently we have switched the mic setup mid-call, so now I'm speaking into a different microphone. Regarding this thing that was just said, it's kind of an interesting question. What does it even mean to like enshrine the ABI? But basically, what the case you're talking about is kind of an impossible case from the mainnet point of view. And then the only thing that could change is like if the contract produces an invalid output, which is inherently like an sort of undefined behavior case, I would say. I don't know if there's any precedent for this type of undefined behavior in the spec, but definitely, yeah, it's just kind of weird.
I think we should just define it. And I think the right way to define it is based on the offset.
Okay.
Like, yes, this might be valid ABI that we're generating as the logs, but no one has ever said that this has to be passed as valid ABI. It can just be some binary output that we're passing with the offsets that we.
Okay, but then this would basically mean we go with the PR. Like the question here is like, is the PR good or not?
I think the PR is good, and I think it should just be enshrined so that in the case that case that will never happen, that this is triggered, then we all do the same thing. Because I think it's way more likely that some ABI library will break at some point and is in the consensus critical path, and then the whole node will shut down. I think that is more of my worry than that the contract somehow returns some valid ABI that is different from the format that we're hard coding, and we are parsing garbage. Like this can happen with if the output of the contract can change anyway, then this will be the case regardless whether we use ABI to decode it or whether we hard code the offsets. Also, I pushing back on the stuff that we're hard coding ABI anyway. In consensus, we're not. That the logs are just whatever you put in memory. You can Solidity hard codes, or Solidity defines the ABI and how logs are done, but the EVM does not. So we have not hard coded ABI in the EVM.
Just to be explicit, what the ABI is, it's all the fields are length prefixed. So they say how long the following data is. So in theory, if they decided to trim the zeros, that would still be valid, but it would screw up all the offsets. But it would still be valid with the length prefixes.
Yeah, but it's not packed by default on logs, so it won't
Yeah,
trigger.
but that's just convention. It could be packed, and with the
Yes.
ABI, it would be fine, but with the offsets, it wouldn't. If somebody, let's say, an L2 decided, well, shouldn't we trim these logs to save in receipt size?
Ahmad, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't understand why we're discussing implementation detail and we want to specify in the spec what every client needs and how it needs to implement this particular part of the spec. Implementation mechanisms are always the choice of a client. Saying that using a specific library can then lead to this library breaking or whatever, this is not a reasoning that we usually use to choose implementations. Every client is always free to choose whatever implementation suitable for a precompile, for example. That there is no enforcement to use a specific library.
Yeah, the problem is not the specific library. The problem is that the testing team wants to hard code this test case, this impossible test case that will never happen with the contracts that we have. But they want to make sure, and they want to hard code this test. And we kind of need to make a decision whether everyone should pass this test or whether everyone should fail this test. But I think we can also take this offline. Because this is consensus layer call. But
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. So perhaps we can handle this async and try to make a decision on what we want to do by next ACD. So next week, that seems like a good way forward. Otherwise, let's see. So there were a number of bugs that have kind of come up here and there in the last week or two. There was like a BLS issue that was found, but has been fixed. Too, Marius says. There was also some concern about the 7702 fee market that people are actively discussing. These are also primarily EL issues, so I kind of would think to hold them off until next week. But yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to touch on these right now.
I can quickly touch up on the BLS stuff. There was an issue that was kind of in the spec. Nethermind interpreted a section in the spec differently than from what it was originally intended. And I don't think that this issue was with Nethermind. The spec was like very weirdly written. There was the one issue, and the second issue was an issue in EVM1. Both have been found by fuzzing, and we added way more test cases to the specs repo, the EELS repo, East repo, and we're doing fuzzing of all of the precompiles in order to catch more of those. But I think hopefully the two are the only things that we need to catch. Yep.
Thank you. Great. So yeah, a number of EL things we can touch. Oh, there is a hand. Oh yeah, Mikhail.
Just I can briefly go over the fee issue kind of thing. There is an analysis in the EIP assets that the report of the analysis, which highlights like most important things here. First of all, there is really a kind of Griffin vector in the fee mechanism, but first of all, there is no DOS vector in it. The logic here is that kind of the model of attack would be so how much it will cost for attacker to block the withdrawal functionality for a certain period of time. And it means that the attacker would need to keep the excess at a certain level, which at some levels of fee that are kind of prohibitive for rescuing deposit of a validator. At the prohibitive fee levels, it will cost attacker a lot. And even for 1 hour, you can take the numbers from this report. On the other hand, there is the Griffin vector indeed. So there can be spikes in the fee, which are relatively cheap to induce. And one of the countermeasures proposed is that we can get a fee update per each request, not per block as we do now. And if we consider like Griffin surface with this improvement in the fee update mechanism, in the fee mechanism, we'll just reduce the surface of Griffin, not entirely eliminated. So there are other approaches to like kind of reduce the Griffin surface would be to increase the target. So the fee goes down faster than it is today. But if we do this, it would mean that we stress CL side with more requests, and CL will, at this point, at these parameters, CL kind of parameters are optimal from CL perspective to process those requests, whether it's a partial withdrawal request or a full withdrawal request. And if we kind of increase target and stress CL more, so there will be lower room for processing those requests. So it's a kind of like really, I would, and the recap is just, yeah, let's keep it as is now. This is just my, my opinion on that. I'm happy if other people take this kind of analysis and take a look at those numbers.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I tend to think we should leave it alone as well, just given, there'd be a round of updates and testing, potentially an audit. That would just add more delay, which we should avoid if we can. PoTUS, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so my first reaction was the same, and it still is, but perhaps it's far-fetched, but I would like to see the other side of this report. So I'd like to see a report not by a core dev, but say for someone actually in the dark forest or in the market side of things, and see if you can actually leverage the delay attack by shorting and running on staked ETH or this kind of things, and see if you can actually finance the attack by shorting on the other leg. I haven't seen this analysis done, and I don't know if it's viable, but it smells like the kind of things that you could do.
Why would the asset be relevant? Like you suggested some kind of short with stake.
Well, just a run, I don't know, a run up and then forcing Lido to not being able to redeem staked ETH, which would just lower the price, DPEG staked ETH, and which would like probably cause a chain reaction on DeFi. I honestly don't know. I'm more a core dev, but I claim that I haven't seen an analysis by the people that actually work on these things on this topic.
Yeah, my understanding of the issue is it's not that severe, but yeah, that's a good point. I'll try to find someone to take a look.
Yeah, this Griffin, regarding staking pools, I believe that staking pools will submit partial withdrawals for consolidated validators in batches, and if they can be griefed by someone and partial withdrawals can be delayed, this is a potential attack vector as well. But I don't know how severe it is. So it's like not delaying by, I don't know, by a day. It's delaying by some amount of time, like an hour, until the fee goes down again. I don't believe that
but
attacker.
if you can actually call a DPEG on staked ETH and actually do an arbitrage on that, I mean, you could probably finance a very long attack. So that's why I would like to see an analysis done by someone that actually thinks along those lines instead of us that we typically think about other kinds of attacks on our protocol.
Yeah, makes sense. I agree. That'd be great to see.
Okay, so yeah, I guess it is good that we're discussing these types of things in terms of, I guess, attacks out on the risk curve. because it means the core of Pectra is stable enough. But yeah, so there's a few things like this everyone's keeping their eyes on. And in the meantime, yeah, so to recap, we will keep Holesky going. We will finalize it. And in the meantime, we'll launch a shadow fork. Anyone who wants to test on Holesky can test there. And yeah, I think the next sort of decision point would be finality back on Holesky. And at that point, we'll have more data to make a call on the next steps around mainnet and launching Pectra. So I think that's it for Pectra today. Anything else? Going once? Okay. So next up would be PeerDAS. Let's touch on that briefly. We canceled the breakout this week. A number of people couldn't make it. We had some discussion around throughput for Fusaka, and I think explored this idea of like a BPO rollout a bit more in depth. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure how the devnets are going. If there's anyone who could give an update here. Potentially no update.
The devnet is going well. Actually, 100% participation. But however, all the nodes are super nodes right now. So all the nodes custody all the data columns. That's it for the devnet.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you just repeat what you said?
Yeah, sorry. The devnet, so PeerDAS devnet 5 is currently running for 2 weeks now. Every client's team perform very well, 100% of participation. However, all the nodes are currently super nodes, meaning that clients do custody all the 128 columns. So basically, there is no really sharding.
Right. Right. So yeah, so I think this is like a step along the path, right? So we just get this with the new mechanism up and stable, test it out, and then yeah, perhaps the next iteration of the devnet will move to a lower distribution of supernodes. Cool. There's something else? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe next week. Maybe you can do that next week.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Anything else on PeerDAS?
Yeah, so I left a comment on the agenda about a couple of open issues, PRs that could use some attention from execution layer teams. One of them is engine API spec changes, and then one is related to sending the KZG proofs with transaction submission, I believe. But yeah, I think both of those some CL teams have looked at, but it would be good if execution layer teams looked at.
Okay, yeah, I can make sure this gets in front of them, and definitely it'll be on the agenda next week. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. If not, everyone, good luck with Holesky and the rest of Pectra. It's been a lot of work, and we're in the middle of it, but we'll get it back. And yeah, if there's not anything else for today, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.